by now the entire country has seen your tweet, and most of the country by now has probably seen the Netflix series Tiger King. I just looked at your tweet. It's got more than 3,000 retweets, and it's gone as far as People Magazine and the New York Times and everywhere. I know the case was never formally closed, but it's sort of being reopened right now, so to speak. You're the fourth sheriff to now have this case. Take us through it. Where are we right now with the case?
Right now, it's a cold case, and what I mean by that is there's no active leads. The last thing we've done with this case, I should say the last two things, was in 2010 when we wanted to get the DNA from Don Lewis's children. We did that. We entered that into a database, hoping that if Don Lewis's body is recovered, we're able to make the connection back to us. We have fingerprints. He had been arrested a couple times. We have dental records, but the one thing missing and wasn't utilized as much back in 1997 was
Right.
DNA. So we added that. Fast forward a year later in 2011, our investigators reached out to Carole and asked her to come in for a polygraph test. She respectfully declined, said that her attorney instructed her not to do it, that it wouldn't vindicate her, and it wouldn't prohibit the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office from pursuing criminal charges in the future if we deemed appropriate.
So you're sitting on the couch with your family watching this series over the weekend. You're in a unique position as the sheriff of Hillsborough County now. Did you sit there and scratch your head and say, "Wow, we gotta relook at this case"?
Well, in some cases we did. There's in some instances we did, I should say. I looked back and I looked at, they talked about the meat grinder and that the meat grinders were used to feed the cats, and people suspect that's the way it happened. And that's why we will never locate him. Well, the meat grinders had been removed from the property, several weeks before his disappearance. I'm not saying they couldn't have been involved, but they weren't on the property. You heard about the septic tank, check the septic tank. Well,
Right.
The septic tank that Carole put in wasn't installed until several years after. But then you look and like you sitting there watching the series, when you look at the fact that this wealthy individual left his wealth behind, left his money behind. When's the last time in all your years of reporting that you've ever heard someone leaving without their wealth behind? And the same thing in law enforcement. In my 28 years experience, I've never had a missing persons case where someone left their entire wealth behind. Along the same lines, they touch on the series, watching it, and they talk about the will.
Right.
Who has ever, and I've talked to some of my friends that are probate attorneys, who has ever seen a will where there's a provision in there, if I ever disappear or become missing, leave the bulk of my wealth to this person?
So bizarre. Is Carole Baskin a suspect right now?
She isn't. She isn't even a person of interest at this point. We have no evidence to deem her or anyone else equally as important as a suspect in this case. And I'm hoping that the popularity of this Netflix series will change that.
So tell us about the tips that you've gotten. Have tips been coming in every day? Have any been legitimate, good, something you'd follow up on?
We've been receiving, on average, the last 6 days, about 6 tips a day, either telephone calls or emails, but no viable tips yet. Most are like you and I. They watch the show and they believe who did it and how he died, and they want to share that with us. And I'm certainly not discouraging anybody from sending anything. And listen, send it all in. We have a detective supervisor who's assigned to the case. We'll comb through it. And again, anything that's viable, we're going to pursue to the end of earth to try to bring some closure to Mr. Lewis's family and bring some justice.
There is, to your point, there's so much, circumstantial evidence in this case, even down to his van being left at that small airport with his keys in the van and his briefcase in there. What businessman would travel somewhere without their briefcase? A lot of twists, a lot of turns, but I think it does seem like something did happen to Don Lewis. Have you spoken with the lead detective that was on the case, John Marciano, who was on it in 1997? And he was the head of kind of the Hillsborough County Missing Persons at that time. Has he weighed in on this at all? Anything changed there?
I have not. I personally haven't contacted him. But you bring up the airport, and one of the things that wasn't covered. Yes, we recovered his car at one of the private airports, but we pulled all the passenger manifest. He wasn't on any type of plane, commercial or private, that left the country. More importantly, he had 2 passports. Neither one of his 2 passports were flagged as leaving the country during this time period either. We also, John Marsicano at the time, and another detective flew down to Costa Rica. No one down there had seen him in several months prior to his disappearance.
What do you think happened to Don Lewis?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I certainly have my suspicions like anyone else. Do I believe he's been killed, that he's dead? Yes, I do. Do I know who did it and how he died? That I don't know. And I'm hoping that we will get that missing interview, that missing piece of evidence to solve this case.
With a cold case, when does it come to the point where you would reapproach somebody like maybe Carole Baskin or even Don's ex-wife Gladys and his daughters? When does that step get taken?
We will revisit and re-interview anytime that we're provided some type of missing information, some type of lead that would warrant us contacting these individuals again.
The public seems pretty convinced, and we've seen this with cases like this before. The public at least seems somewhat convinced that Carole should be at least considered a suspect. There was something in the series that was interesting that I looked into. It did seem like Don tried to file a restraining order against Carole about 2 months before he actually died or went missing in August of '97. He filed it in June. It was not withheld, but could that be considered something that could be a motive, a pending divorce or something like that in a relationship? What usually happens in these cases in your experience?
Well, there's a lot of reasons that end up becoming motives. We were told that by his office manager back then when we interviewed her, but we weren't able to track it down. We weren't able ever to find through the court system that there was anything filed. So that didn't become a viable lead back then either. I have to tell you, as complicated and as eccentric all these individuals were in this Tiger King documentary, his life was no different. And I think that's what became such an obstacle in solving this case.
So you're the 4th sheriff now to have this case since 1997. You think that you'll be the sheriff to finally bring justice to Don Lewis's family?
I sure hope so. I hope there would nothing that would be more gratifying than be the sheriff to say that after 23 years, my administration is responsible for solving the missing case or homicide of Don Lewis.
And have you guys been in touch with Carole at all since the series dropped on Netflix?
We haven't. We haven't been in touch with Carole at all. I did ask our investigators again to reach out to Don Lewis's family just to make sure that if they hadn't seen that the show had ever increasingly becoming popular, that if they heard something, to make sure they passed it on to them, and they may deem a detail or an encounter or someone sending them something as some type of insignificant detail. But for us, it could be something that's tremendous or that missing piece of the puzzle we've been waiting for. So we are reaching out to them to ask them, hey, if you hear something, if someone contacts you, any type of communication, please forward it to us.
Then I want to get that number out there too. People can call 813-247-8200. Sheriff Chronister, that tweet went absolutely everywhere. The series has been everywhere. We're all social distancing. We're all home. So everybody's watching the series. If you can tell us, what's the wildest tip that somebody's phoned in?
Ooh. I tell you what, we've gotten everything, from meat grinders to him being killed by his both business associates over in Costa Rica. I don't know if I can deem anything more wild than the other. And it's only because all of them live such an eccentric lifestyle that I think to the normal person, all of us would believe that every lead would be a wild one.
I mean, can you believe this stuff? If Don Lewis were still alive, he'd be 81 years old. So you think that he was murdered? He didn't just disappear to Costa Rica or somewhere. Is that safe in assuming?
I believe, and this is just my humble opinion, I believe that he was murdered. And I think that's why a judge 5 years after his disappearance deemed him as a deceased person as well.
All right, Sheriff Chronister, thanks so much for your time. Good luck with this. Please keep us posted. Really interesting stuff, to say the least. Thank you.
Most certainly will. You and your family stay healthy.
Yeah, you too, Sheriff. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.